overnight, the body of 64-year-old hiker Alistair Thompson found on the Larapinta Trail. Maningrida mourn a future leader after she was allegedly murdered in Darwin on Saturday. Relief for low-paid workers with the minimum wage to rise by $33 a week. And commercial fishers clash with traditional owners over prime angling territory in northeast Arnhem Land. Good evening, Kyle Dowling with ABC News. A Victorian man who went missing along a popular hiking trail in Central Australia has been found dead. Late last night, NT Police confirmed it had found Alistair Thompson's body 5 days after a search and rescue effort began on the Larapinta Trail. Family and friends now sharing their love in an outpouring of grief.
A challenging trek across a stunning landscape which ended in tragedy. 64-year-old Alistair Thompson set off on May 13 for his hike along the Larapinta Trail. His last communication was a text to his family on May 21, but when he failed to check into his accommodation in Alice Springs, an extensive search effort began. It homed in on Section 6 of the trail, a notoriously difficult part of the 230-kilometre trek. And after discovering his body on Sunday, police are now consoling his family.
We are incredibly empathetic for the grieving journey that her and her family are on at this moment, and we'll do everything in our power to ensure that we can assist wherever possible.
The outpouring of grief for the father and grandfather has been immense, his family saying they're devastated by the loss and extending their gratitude to the community. We will be forever grateful for their assistance in helping us bring Alistair home. Mr Thompson's wife Glenda is now in Alice Springs as police prepare to repatriate his body. Authorities are confident that no urgent changes need to be made to the trail.
It doesn't happen very often. I think the trails are incredibly well marked here. Parks and Wildlife do an incredible job to ensure the safety and to ensure the mapping of walkers that are walking across the trails.
Police are still yet to confirm the exact cause of the 64-year-old's death. A report will now be prepared for the coroner, while the trail will remain open. Miles Holbrook Walk, ABC News, Alice Springs.
The people of Maningrida are today in mourning after the death of a First Nations woman who was expected to be a future leader of the remote community. The woman was allegedly murdered by her former partner in Darwin over the weekend, with the 43-year-old man charged expected to face court tomorrow.
A remote community mourning a young woman who would have been one of its future leaders.
Jungai are highly respected. They're the keeper of culture and land, and they are traditionally the cultural authority. I know that she was, one of those people that we would like to see as a future director.
Her clan's traditional owner corporation says the 36-year-old, who the ABC isn't naming for cultural reasons, was travelling with the Army's Northwest Mobile Force when a relative asked for a lift home from Darwin several days ago. Over the weekend, police say they found her in this public housing block in Darwin's north.
Once somebody else that lived at the premises became aware that assistance was needed, they called police and police were on scene from that point very quickly.
Her 43-year-old accused killer, who also has ties to Maningrida, is expected to face court tomorrow, charged with murder and other offences. Police allege the incident is domestic violence related, again highlighting the strain on an under-resourced support sector in the Territory. The Chief Minister says she's looking at ways to increase funding to the sector after delivering a $4 million underspend last year and lobbying the Commonwealth for a larger slice of federal funding. In the meantime, she says the block of units where the alleged attack took place is set to be demolished.
The old model of having those large units or large unit blocks with lots of people there, you see people congregating, people coming from out of town there, people drinking. It's not, we understand that it's not safe.
In Maningrida, traditional owners hope a new local decision-making agreement will help empower them to address the drivers of gendered violence at their roots. Lillian Rangia, ABC News.
And if you or someone you know needs help, please contact 1-800-RESPECT by phone or their website, Or if you're experiencing distress, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Hundreds of thousands of Australian households are being charged electricity prices based on their single biggest point of usage across an entire month. An investigation from the ABC has found some residential customers are being moved to so-called demand rates without being told and not being able to opt out. It's led to claims that power firms are using sneaky tactics to gouge customers.
At home among the tall trees and his animals, Steve Gale has little to complain about. He moved to his hobby farm on the New South Wales mid-north coast more than a decade ago, seeking the simple life.
We're Sydney refugees and we wanted a tree change.
One part of his life that's not getting simpler, though, is his electricity bills. The retired mechanical engineer is bothered by their growing complexity. Chief among his complaints is a little-known pricing scheme called a demand tariff. It works by taking his single highest point of demand for electricity from the grid and applying that rate across an entire month. And it's levied on top of consumption and daily service charges.
It's quite a shock to suddenly see that on the bill. That wasn't advertised on the website.
Steve is not alone. In New South Wales, close to a quarter of households have been shifted onto time of use or flexible tariffs. In South Australia, it's over 40%. Fuelling the shift is the mass rollout of smart electricity meters, which regulators want installed on every Australian home by the end of the decade.
If we were to do nothing, the cost of the grid would be higher.
While retailers acknowledge there are problems with the rollout of smart meters and the tariff reforms they enable, they say using the grid more efficiently will be crucial as the energy transition gathers pace. But critics say the changes are being handled so poorly, they're often hurting consumers and putting at risk many of the supposed benefits.
I think it's really quite an appalling failure of the system.
Steve says the lack of notification or education for consumers is particularly damning.
It's almost arbitrary. If people have got no control over their peak demand, then they're just going to get slugged. It's a penalty, a stick without a carrot.
When the grass for consumers isn't always greener. Daniel Mercer, ABC News.
More than 2.5 million Australians are set for a pay rise next month. That's after a ruling by the Fair Work Commission to raise minimum and award wages. It puts about $33 extra into the pockets of full-time workers each week, but industry groups say some businesses will struggle to afford it.
Millions of workers like Danielle Maston are getting a pay rise.
I'm averaging about 30 hours a fortnight because I'm studying full-time as well. So overall, money-wise, it's a good thing to be getting paid a little bit extra.
Like 2.6 million other workers, Danielle is set to pocket an extra 3.75%. From next month, the minimum hourly rate is rising from $23.23 to just over $24, or about $33 extra a week to almost $916 for full-time workers.
Modern award minimum wages remain in real terms lower than they were 5 years ago.
Unions are disappointed the Commission isn't boosting wages by more, but it says that low-paid workers will also benefit from the Stage 3 tax cuts.
A mid-level community worker will be $3,200 a year better off. An entry-level retail or hospo worker will be $2,600 a year better off.
But industry groups say the Fair Work Commission's ruling goes too far, with retail and hospitality sectors battling rising insolvencies.
It tests the acceptable limit for business, particularly for small business.
This outcome does not give us a higher inflation track than we already had. We continue to see inflation coming down through the second half of this year.
Unions were pushing for an extra increase to the awards that cover female-dominated industries like early childhood educators and dental assistants, but the Fair Work Commission has held back and instead has announced a review.
The Commission have now set down a process with timelines, prioritised the most feminised awards, and we will see a shift.
A push for fairer work. Amelia Terzon, ABC News.
Josh Frydenberg has put to bed speculation he might make a late run at his old seat in Melbourne. The former treasurer had considered a bid to try to win back the seat of Kooyong at the next election, but it would have meant dumping the female candidate already running, and some former colleagues were warning against it. Here's political reporter Tom Lowry.
Back to the campaign trail.
I'm so excited to be out here today campaigning in the Kooyong community.
Amelia Hamer, still the Liberal candidate for Kooyong, as Josh Frydenberg's flirtation with a comeback fizzles.
I think Josh is a fantastic figure in the party, but I'm the candidate for Kooyong and I intend to continue standing.
All morning, the former treasurer's former colleagues weighed up his possible return.
The Liberal Party in Victoria should do all that it can to ensure that we attract Josh Frydenberg back in to stand in Parliament.
Josh would be silly not to be looking at the new boundaries and not be reconsidering his decision last year not to recontest.
The party has already pre-selected Amelia Hamer. Amelia is a highly qualified young woman.
The division has pre-selected a young, capable, hardworking, intelligent woman. And I think Kooyong is certainly in play, and Amelia is an excellent candidate.
Some others around the party were a little more direct.
Women are not collateral damage for Josh Frydenberg's regrets, and they shouldn't be treated as such.
Josh Frydenberg himself put the speculation to bed, posting to social media, "I am not rushing back to politics. My position on contesting the next election remains unchanged." This story ends where it began only a day ago, but we did learn two things along the way. Some in the Liberal Party see a need for a figure like Josh Frydenberg to return, while others see offering young, talented and female candidates as a much more pressing concern. In Kooyong, at least, those in the second camp have carried the day. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
The Immigration Minister has conceded he was incorrect in claiming drones were being used to monitor people recently released from detention. More than 150 people are now in the community after the High Court ruled in November that indefinite immigration detention for people with no reasonable prospect of deportation was unlawful. The group includes serious convicted criminals and some are being monitored with ankle bracelets. Andrew Giles said last week drones were also being used by authorities to keep track of them. After days of questioning and stonewalling by the government, he's now said that was wrong.
I relied on information provided by my department at the time, which has since been clarified.
Members on my left.
As part of the work monitoring and supporting community safety, Operation Aegis draws on information from a range of sources using different technologies, including aerial open source and other imagery through their work with state and territory law enforcement bodies.
Traditional owners and recreational anglers in northeast Arnhem Land have raised the alarm over the laying of gill nets in restricted intertidal waters. The commercial industry claims it is allowed to fish beyond Aboriginal areas of the Arnhem Bay coastline, while government figures say investigations will follow if commercial operators are encroaching on protected waters.
What looks like a commercial gill net in coastal waters, not the catch these fishers were looking for.
If that's not a slap in the face, then what is?
Last year, Yolngu traditional owners closed 2 prime fishing spots in northeast Arnhem Land due to concerns of overfishing and bycatch of protected species. But recent footage suggests commercial operators may now be pushing the boundaries of intertidal zones in Arnhem Bay, set out by a High Court decision in 2008.
They're really walking the fine line between what is legal and what isn't.
Yolngu leaders are furious that commercial operators may still be fishing within casting distance of protected waters.
The fishermen been just disrespecting and going back to cause problems and just fish the way they used to do, which is killing a lot of fish and doing a lot of damage.
The government is hoping to resolve a standoff between the various stakeholders with a long-term fisheries policy expected this year.
We continue to work with the commercial fishers, the recreational fishers, the Indigenous and traditional owners. This has been a really, really strong consultation period.
The NT Seafood Council insists commercial operators haven't broken any laws and are well within their rights to fish beyond the protected areas of the Arnhem Bay coastline. Yolngu leaders, meanwhile, have demanded that the industry leave Arnhem Bay entirely until formal agreements are made with traditional owners.
We need you to keep away until the Northern Land Council and the people here and the Fisheries Department have agreed when you can come back and do fishing again.
A kettle of fish not expected to be resolved anytime soon. Oliver Chaseling, ABC News.
A 30-year-old woman's body has been pulled from the rubble of a house that exploded in Sydney's west on Saturday. May Jasmine was unaccounted for following the explosion near Mount Druitt. After an extensive search, her body was found in what's believed to be the kitchen in the early hours of this morning. Her family released a statement thanking emergency services for their tireless efforts. 5 other people were injured and several other properties were damaged in the blast. Locals reported smelling gas in the lead-up to the incident. An urgent investigation has been launched. The Fair Work Commission has ruled freelance journalist Antoinette Lattouf was sacked by the ABC partway into a radio hosting job in Sydney last year. It paves the way for her to pursue the broadcast for unlawful termination in the federal court. The ABC maintains it acted properly because Ms Lattouf did not comply with a direction about her social media use.
Flanked by lawyers, Antoinette Lattouf took on the ABC in the Fair Work Commission earlier this year, claiming she was unfairly dismissed because of a social media post about the war in Gaza. The case has attracted protesters, both against and in support of the presenter.
Free, free Gaza!
Today, the Commission has ruled Ms Lattouf was sacked. She was hired for 5 days in December, but was taken off air on day 3. Ms Lattouf claimed the ABC told her she'd breached social media policy, with this post on her personal Instagram, reshared from a Human Rights Watch account. The ABC argued Ms Lattouf was not terminated because she was paid for her remaining shifts. But the Commission's Deputy President, Gerard Boyce, has rejected that. The applicant was not allocated any further or other work to perform, and she was asked to politely leave sooner rather than later. Ms Lattouf has released a statement. I am bitterly disappointed that I was fired for posting a fact the ABC itself was also reporting. The truth isn't always convenient or comfortable, but it doesn't stop being factual.
Today's decision paves the way for Antoinette Lattouf to pursue the ABC here in the federal court. Her lawyers have already filed a second case, arguing the ABC breached its enterprise agreement by firing her without notifying her in writing.
Today's decision didn't rule on whether complaints about Ms Lattouf from pro-Israel lobbyists led to her sacking. In a statement, the ABC says it acted on the basis of a belief that Ms Lattouf had not complied with a direction about her social media use, and it will continue to defend the matter in the federal court. Isabel Rowe, ABC News, Sydney.
Coming up on 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson, should children under 14 be banned from social media?
We've seen a spike in childhood anxiety. We've seen massive growth in young people's depression.
Knowing how the brains are wired to use it compulsively, it just got too hard to manage.
Anyone who thinks that teenagers are not savvy enough to figure out how to get around something like this, I think is kind of kidding themselves.
The United States continues to press Israel on the Gaza ceasefire proposal outlined by President Joe Biden last week. Hamas is yet to give an official response to the 3-part plan, which would begin with a 6-week cessation of hostilities in Gaza. There would also be a surge of humanitarian aid as well as the exchange of some hostages for Palestinian prisoners. Israel has accepted the framework of the deal, but there's been vocal opposition from some members of the government.
Well, this was an Israeli proposal. We have every expectation that if Hamas agrees to the proposal, as was transmitted to them, an Israeli proposal, that Israel would say yes.
North Korea's aggressive posturing in recent years has fueled speculation it could be angling for a conflict with the South. For the small island of Yongpyong, the danger from the north is very real. North Asia correspondent James Oaten travelled there to talk to residents.
In case of emergency, seek shelter. There are 8 government bomb bunkers that dot this small island.
This phone is a hotline for us to contact the military base.
Equipped with enough supplies for residents to hunker down for a week.
This is also emergency food, and this is a gas mask.
Yongpyong is a sleepy spot made up of mostly fishers and pensioners who spend their days picking shellfish for supper. But the tiny island is just a few kilometres from North Korean territory, clearly visible even on a gloomy day.
If they really wanted to, they could still take us out in one shot.
The threat of attack from North Korea isn't just hypothetical, it's real. These charred ruins are what remains after North Korea shelled the island in 2010, retaliation for South Korean military exercises. 2 civilians and 2 soldiers were killed. And this year, residents were forced underground after more artillery fire landed nearby.
At night, even a small noise makes me anxious. I can't sleep with the lights off, I have to keep the TV on, always worried about what might happen.
North Korea tends to carry out provocations as a show-off, but if a local war breaks out, we are powerless.
The threat of war has always felt close to home for residents of Yonpyong, but here in Seoul, analysts are less worried, confident that Pyongyang understands it has the inferior firepower.
North Korea is in no strategic position, and it does not have sufficient strategic and military capability to actually carry out those rhetorics of war.
Some islanders hold the same view.
It's fine. Those bastards can't do anything. Our country protects us well.
But as North Korea continues to talk tough and test new weapons, residents remain firmly on the lookout. James Elton, ABC News, Yongpyong.
And tensions on the Korean peninsula have been simmering over the weekend in a campaign from Pyongyang labelled absurd and irrational from the south. North Korea has sent around 600 balloons over the border carrying manure, cigarette butts and even toilet paper. It says it sent the rubbish after South Korean activists floated anti-regime leaflets over the border the same way. North Korea says it will stop sending the so-called trash balloons for now, but has warned it will resume if more leaflets are sent. Vote counting in the world's biggest election gets underway tomorrow, with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi expected to win a 3rd straight term in office. But reduced voter turnout and a more unified opposition have emerged as an unexpectedly strong challenge for him.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's constituency is the ancient and holy city of Varanasi. It is crucial to his brand of religious revivalism. In the past 2 general elections, the Modi wave obliterated the opposition here and in the rest of the country. But one of the opposition's top leaders says this year it's a different ballgame.
There's neither a Modi wave nor Modi magic. When people look at the last 10 years, they can see that unemployment has never been higher and farmers have been cheated.
Their rallies here have drawn thousands, even in the searing heat.
The opposition alliance has a spring in its step. Its rallies are lively, its leaders are charged up.
In 2014, I voted for Modi. I thought I did such a good thing.
The Hindu nationalism that had captured the country since 2014 may be losing some of its luster, even here in the holiest of Hindu cities. Unemployment and rising costs of living have emerged as the top issues for voters this year.
I'm a young person, so my first priority is employment. All these other issues like religion are irrelevant to me.
As young people across the country feel their future security is uncertain, they might be switching off from politics altogether.
I haven't decided. I'll pick at random.
Indian elections are notoriously tricky to predict, but Mr. Modi still has plenty of juice left in the tank.
He's like a saint, a Mahatma, in the form of a god.
He is still widely expected to win. Hannah Joes, ABC News.
Mexico is set to elect its first female president. Former mayor of Mexico City, Claudia Sheinbaum, has a crushing lead over her nearest challenger and has claimed victory with more than half of ballots counted. She has promised to give the National Guard greater powers and create programs to help young people avoid gangs. Her toughest challenge will be curbing violent crime, which is now at a historic high. 2 people were killed at polling booths on voting day, with dozens of candidates assassinated during the campaign for these elections. To finance now, and Australian house prices increased almost 1% in May to be more than 8% higher in the past 12 months. Here's Alan Kohler.
Apart from the fact that Brisbane now has the second most expensive houses in the country after Sydney, 8% dearer than Melbourne, the other big news in housing is that Adelaide and Perth are surging, while prices in Hobart and Darwin are falling. And the other thing worth noting is that Sydney's median price is 37% higher than Brisbane's, and that's an incredible difference between the number 1 and number 2 markets in a country. Here's a graph of monthly changes showing that Perth is setting the crackingest pace at the moment. And here's a chart of the change over 5 years, which shows that Adelaide is in front. Now, the percentage rise in Adelaide is twice that of Sydney and more than 4 times that of Melbourne. And for my last chart on this subject, we hear a lot about housing approvals and completions being well down, which is true, but while those numbers do eventually flow through to housing values, what really matters is the supply of existing homes right now. And listings of those have fallen 30% in 5 years and are now well below average. The share market went up 0.7% with big gains by banks. Jewellery retailer Lovisa said it had hired the CEO of Smiggle, John Cheston, as its new CEO, but he's given Smiggle 12 months' notice. The existing CEO of Lovisa, Victor Herrero, is famously the second highest paid CEO on the ASX, on $30 million last year. Now, he's going to stay on for a year for a measly $2 million, and his replacement will be paid $2.35 million, or 47 times today's new minimum wage. But despite the cost saving, Lovisa's share price fell 10%. Global markets all rose, commodities all fell, and the Australian dollar didn't move. And that's finance.
Japan's Yuka Sasso has won the Women's US Open in Pennsylvania after a disastrous 8-over par 78 in the final round from Australia's Min Jin Lee. The 28-year-old Lee had a 3-shot lead after 8 holes, but would finish in a tie for 9th after double bogeys on the 12th and 14th holes. Sasso had a 2-under par 68 to win by 3 shots from countrywoman Hanako Shibuno. It was Sasso's first tournament win since her US Open victory 3 years ago.
I definitely had a little doubt if I can win again or if I won't win again. But yeah, I think those experiences helped a lot, and yeah, I think I was able to prove a little bit something to myself.
The Australian women's rugby team will head to the Olympics with confidence after winning the World 7 Series. Australia defeated France 26 points to 7 in the final of the season-ending event in Madrid. Prolific try scorer Madison Levi finished with a hat-trick. And time for the weather now, and getting us started is tonight's viewer pick of Casuarina Beach sent in by David King. Sunny across most of the NT, a rain band spread in the south of the Northern Territory. It was 32 in Darwin today, 33 for Jabiru. Zooming out, Katherine reached 32 degrees, 32 in Maningrida and Borroloola 29. A top of 18 in Alice Springs, 24 for Tennant Creek and 14 in Yulara. The satellite is showing mostly clear skies over the NT. A cloud band in WA is tracking over central Australia, and there's some clouds spiralling around a deep low pressure system northeast of Tasmania. A cold front will weaken over central Australia tomorrow, and a high pressure system is expected to move over WA. Looking at the capitals across the country tomorrow, a shower or 2 in Hobart, Melbourne partly cloudy, some morning frost in Canberra reaching 13. Mostly sunny for Sydney, a top of 21 in Brisbane, cloudy in Adelaide and partly cloudy day in Perth tomorrow. And looking at the NT, forecast for tomorrow, 18 and a possible early shower at Alice Springs, 17 in Yulara and 23 for Tennant Creek. Heading north, mostly sunny and 32 in Katherine, Daly Waters 29, 33 for Bullman, and over in the west, 33 for Bachelor and a sunny 31 degrees in store for Darwin tomorrow. There's a morning low tide at 9:08 and a high tide just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun will rise tomorrow just after 7 o'clock and set at 6:28. Clear conditions continuing for Darwin. It's expected to become more cool and dry through the week. And for Alice Springs, a chance of an early shower tomorrow. Cloudy conditions likely clearing late in the week. That's all from the Darwin newsroom for tonight. Stay with us now. Sarah Ferguson is up next with 7:30. Good night.